Welcome to the How Did That Work Out podcast, where we share, explore, as well as inspect internally and externally a variety of our life situations as well as others, all for the purpose of answering, how did that work out? I'm your host, Graham.
And I'm your host, Mike J.
Here we go.
Oh, man. We made it through that.
Snowmageddon.
Jeez. Yeah, what do we want to call that? The Great Tundra of 21? You know, like there'll be something that we refer to it as, and our kids will like be sort of emotionally scarred by it for life.
Well, maybe we ought to get our listeners up to speed here, and that is that, you know, basically we live in Texas, and so we were part of that whole week-long snow, ice, sleet, power outage storm, which we withered, and we did certainly feel the effects, especially with the freezing cold, obviously, snow, and, you know, I don't know how many inches it was, but even if it was just 1 inch, you know, for Texas, that's a big deal because it just usually doesn't snow very, very regularly. And then we had our rolling power outages. Our longest stretch was, we counted at 7 hours. What was your situation?
We had an 8-hour situation, and that felt pretty. And that's the worst we had it. You know, we got through it relatively unscathed. We had a couple frozen pipes, but we were diligent and we hopped on it quick. We knew it happened quickly. And, you know, that space heater you loaned us, that was heating up the laundry room, unfreezing those laundry pipes. It was the damage was more just the unknown. Like, how long is this going to go on? You know, do we have enough food? You know, and we have small child.
Well, and that's the thing about this particular storm is that it wasn't just that, it was cold. It was, you know, -12 with wind chill, number one. Number two, when you have power outages, you don't have heat.
Yeah.
And power outages were, although they were sporadic during the day, they hit hardest at night. So, you know, I remember having to, you know, bundle up with a winter coat, you know, in bed just to try to get some sleep, which that doesn't always work out that well. But to also then know that you're basically cut off. I mean, our cellular service, every time we'd lose power, our cellular service, you know, tanked as well. So we didn't even have cellular.
Same here. Yeah. It was pretty bad.
Yeah. And so obviously when you don't have power, you also don't have internet, right? And if you don't have cellular, you don't have internet or phone. And with the roads being unpassable, we couldn't even go to the store to get things if we needed it. Not that they would even have anything on the shelves, even if we did make it, right? So this was kind of like the catastrophe that, you know, and again, maybe on a smaller scale, but this was about as close to a natural disaster almost on all levels, because also we had water shortages, which means we also had to boil water, or we're still having to boil water, actually. We're still boiling water, and this is, well, now it's, Saturday that we're recording this, right? And it would be a week yesterday, a full week, yeah? So we're 1 day past a week, and we're still having to boil water. Water pressure is not fully restored, I don't think. So again, I mean, we've got definitely have these issues. And then, you know, for me personally, to add insult to injury, I also lost my dad a week ago, you know, during all this.
Yeah.
And, you know,
so sorry.
Yeah. Well, thank you. You know, lost him due to COVID, and, you know, that it was hard enough that he was in another state, and thankfully I got to say goodbye. I'm grateful. I mean, he wasn't conscious, but, you know, my relatives, you know, held the phone to his ear, and I at least got to say a few words. And so maybe it was more for me than it was for him, but did get to say goodbye, but obviously couldn't see him, even if I had wanted to, even if we didn't have a pandemic. we were socked in with this snow. So there was no flights,
Yeah.
there was no, none of that. And then when you add the pandemic on top of all of that, then what you have, is a situation where, well, do I fly or do I drive? And then, again, winter weather. There were no good answers.
Yeah. Yeah. The weather's like, you ain't doing shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
there were really no good answers, whatsoever. And so yeah, that made it even harder. But in any case, that was essentially, the week from hell. And I say that, I mean, for me, going without power and, having to bundle up to stay warm. I mean, that was, I had to do that in my military days. We had generator outages, overseas,
Mm-hmm.
and you kept warm by any means necessary. Whether it's layered clothing and all that good stuff. No power. Reading by flashlight or writing a letter by flashlight. For me, that was a throwback. But for my wife, that was a fresh misery she had never really experienced before in her life.
Brand new emotional torture.
Well, it helps us feel real, like men, whereas, the women,
Yeah,
they didn't do so
there's a
hot.
piece of it. Yeah, well, there's a piece of it where you're like, it's survival mode.
Yes.
I've got to protect my frontier.
Yes.
And yeah, it was a throwback for me, the cold Michigan winters and realizing like, oh, we don't have any power, but you can still light the gas stove with
Yes.
a match and have a nice meal.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
just little stupid shit. What was one of my oh duh moments is, we were dripping faucets to avoid them from freezing. And all that drippage is just going down the drain away.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait a minute, dummy. And this was like on the third day.
Uh-huh.
Why don't you capture that water and use it for something? Just basic stuff.
Wait a minute.
Yeah. Yeah. You're just wasting water. But I have to. No, you don't. Use it.
That stove thing is very funny because we tried turning on our fireplace, which is gas, and they were throttling the gas. So the flames started, half the height they normally are. And then then the flames started getting smaller and smaller. And so we just turned it off. And I told my wife, I said, look, we can turn on the stove. The igniter is electric, but the gas still ought to flow.
Right.
Unless they're throttling it so bad you can't even get a flame. And I said, why don't you get our barbecue lighter and, light one of the burners? And she's like, oh, no, I don't want to do that. So I did it. I showed her it, and it was almost like, Cave Woman in Fire. Like, as soon as I lit it, she's like, turn it off. I don't want to blow up. I'm like, really?
I don't want this abomination in my house. It's not supposed to work that way.
I'm a sorcerer. I bring fire into the home, and
yeah, witchery.
So yeah,
and he was king from thereafter.
So we would definitely take advantages of power to use the microwave and or the stove or whatever, but God forbid.
Yeah. Yeah, our problems were pretty first world, and that was easy to deal with. It never got gritty. It never got seriously threatening. We did all right. The impassable roads. Now there's something. You might not have your services. Half of our community didn't have gas, electric, or water for a week.
Right.
And those people, we know some of those people. We got one report, it's 43 degrees. There's no nothing. And we're all just huddled in the middle of the living room under a blanket tent.
Yeah.
So, but the impassable roads, our municipality not prepped to handle that. So that was cute. They threw some sand on the main parkway. But that was it.
Yeah, but when it happens, once a generation or two generations, it doesn't make sense to stock up on trucks and salt, for the maybes, right? I mean, elsewhere it's kind of a given, right? For here, this was a freak, occurrence. So
forecasted freak occurrence.
Well, that's true. That's true. They did see it coming, and that's why the power outages were so egregious, in my opinion, because They knew the storm was coming. You can, if you buy power, from suppliers and packages, if you know a storm's coming, why wouldn't you stock up like you'd stock up on water, or food, but instead you wait until it's, a tragedy, and then you have to introduce those rolling blackouts to keep the rest of the grid up and running. And then you're buying power at a premium, at a very high premium, because you're reacting, instead of preparing and being proactive about it. So to me, that was the biggest, failure. And it's not really the Texas government. It's that ERCOT conglomerate or whatever, that board, which my wife tells me, I think only one member of that board actually lives in Texas. The rest all live in other places in the country. One lives in Canada. So they weren't really localized, right, to our plight.
Well, isn't ERCOT primarily, isn't their function to be regulatory, not to be sort of like executive or administrative? Is that right?
I want to say yes, but I do understand though, because we did have rolling blackouts back in 2011, I think, and the ERCOT came to the forefront again. And ERCOT actually, it's a group of electric suppliers that formed a board, right? So it's my understanding though that they can buy power wholesale from other grids, and they have that ability to do that, and then they can then distribute it amongst the members of ERCOT, right? The members of that board. So regardless, as a board, they did not see far enough ahead to say, wait a minute, we got a storm coming. Why don't we stock up on power from other grids, so we have it in case we need it. And if we don't need it, but you're buying it at a lower tier versus when you buy it during a natural disaster of sorts, then you're going to pay a very high premium. So they do have that ability because the members of ERCOT are power companies, so they can buy power, in wholesale,
Yeah, I heard you say that. So they, among others in Texas, could have purchased some of that electricity in advance in case we needed it. Also, could have purchased some snow plows
or rented.
Yeah. A lot more could have been done by a lot more people at a higher level. I'll say that.
We've had a lot of false alarms in this area, Central Texas, right? But Texas is a big place, and I think that we've had so many false alarms. Double hurricanes come in, and everybody empties the shells of water, and then we get maybe a passing drizzle, and so I almost wonder if certain people just didn't take it as seriously as it should have been, only because of the past where everybody's made big preparations. They, close schools, and they, deploy the National Guard, and, the worst you get is the worst you get is a passing shower.
It's quite possible, but being the next door neighbor of a city like New Orleans, you think we would kind of take some of those lessons and apply them to our own backyard.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So it was definitely, and I've lived in a snow belt. I've lived, on the East Coast. And so I've done blizzards and I've done all of that, but I also grew up in California. And now that I live in Texas, I mean, there's a reason I moved to Texas and didn't move, to Wisconsin or Minnesota or, so, and the lack of snow was one of those reasons, why I chose Texas. But you're right, though. It was kind of first world, but the hardest part was not knowing how long it was going to last. I myself didn't sleep for 3 nights, with between the news of my dad, but then with the power outages and the cold, but then also, I use a breathing machine, a CPAP, for sleep apnea. And so when you have power, you put the mask on, you fall asleep, power goes out, and there's no air being pushed, so you feel like you're suffocating.
Right.
So you take off the mask, and then I would put it kind of rested on my forehead, and then when I'd get power again, I'd put the mask back on because it would be blasting because it just turned on from nothing, right? So it'd be blasting. So I put the mask on again, so I'm awake again. and then the power will go out again, and then I'm
Right.
awake again because I'm suffocating, and then
Right.
I take the mask out. So that was like for 3 nights, I didn't really sleep. And the first night we had
Wow.
power consistently throughout the night, I slept like a rock. I slept hard. I mean, normally I would need kind of some kind of sleep aid. Not this time. I slept, not only did I sleep the whole night through, when the alarm went on, I hit snooze like 3 or 4 times. I was like not ready to go. So it was,
Oh man,
yeah,
good for
yeah.
you. I had one of those night sleeps. It might have been the same night you're talking about, where I woke up in the middle of the night with like a neck twist pain of like, did somebody just drop me in a pile and I fell asleep because I laid in some weird position for the longest hard sleepingest
You
time.
just
You know what I
slumped
mean?
over.
And I'm like, how did I stay asleep with this much pain in my neck? But I had one of those too. I will show my cards. So today I'm about 5 pounds heavier and 100% more hungover than I was the last time we talked.
Really?
Um, well, I ran out of my daddy drink supplies, like
Okay.
Monday,
Uh-huh.
and
Uh-huh.
that's fine. But then some family members of ours came by to take some showers because they don't have water, and they
Oh
brought
my.
some wine. And it had been a
Uh-huh.
week, like work wise, and then everything you and I just talked about. And yeah, I had a few glasses of the good juice.
Well, good for you. Good for you. Yeah, daddy's little reward.
It was cathartic. It totally was. Where you're just like emotional for all the reasons, not one single reason.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and that was this whole situation. Was it wasn't just one thing. It was things stacked on top of each
Yeah.
other, one after the other. I even emailed my boss and said, "Okay, so when do the locusts arrive and the floods begin?" Because we had everything but that at this point.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And maybe we're sounding dramatic to some others, but for us, this isn't the norm, right? Obviously.
It's not normal, and I've heard and read some stories, man. People. There's been a few misadventures from what I've read,
Sure.
but also just people burning, living room furniture in the fireplace to stay warm, and
What? For real? I
yeah,
thought that was in the movies. Wow.
right.
Wow.
People thinking they were gonna prep, grab a bunch of ice and put it in a pan or put it in the bathtub, but it was so damn cold the ice isn't melting. Where they maybe
Oh
should
my.
have gotten snow. There was plenty of it, but
Right.
they didn't. They
Right.
weren't trained in these survival skills, so they're sitting there staring at blocks of ice that aren't doing them shit. Oh, one of our friends in Houston, her pipes burst, literally burst, flooded her entire house with about 3 inches of water.
That was our biggest worry. I mean, we've got water tanks up in our attic. So essentially that's a third level,
Mm,
right? And so we've got the water tanks. We dripped our faucets and thankfully that worked. I mean, we wrapped our pipes outside right before it all started, but we didn't know it was going to last like a week of below freezing temperatures for like an
mm,
entire week straight, right?
right.
So the dripping the faucets was a new thing, for us, but we didn't even really have to do that when I lived back east that I recall. And again, there'd been blizzards and whatnot.
Well, in back east, everyone either has a basement or a
Mhm.
crawl space underneath their house that
Yes.
is being warmed
Yes.
by the heating systems pumping heat through the houses. Yeah,
There you go. There you go. That's exactly right. Now
yeah.
that I think about it, I had a basement. It looked like the basement looked like something out of the Blair Witch Project, but yeah, it was it was stone. It was a house built at the turn of the century. It was an old Victorian home, and so
Yeah, yeah. Growing up in northern Michigan, we had the crawl space.
did you?
We were super rural, like way out in the country. And once in a while, my dad would have to crawl under there with a propane torch and just
Mm,
thaw out a pipe. But for the most part,
wow.
the wood burning furnace that was pumping heat underneath the house through the radiators that come out of the floor, and not out of the ceiling, all those water pipes were being warmed.
Oh, nice. Well, that explains it. That explains a lot. And here in Texas, we have concrete slabs
Yeah.
instead of crawl spaces and basements.
Yeah. I've got a doomsday bus under mine, a tornado shelter.
No kidding. I mean, well, and we're on limestone. So in the Texas Hill Country in central Texas, it's all limestone. So you got
Yeah.
maybe 2 inches of soil and then you hit solid rock with that
Yeah.
limestone.
Super hard rock, from what I understand.
Oh, absolutely. So you pretty much need to blast it with dynamite just to get a hole going in it, a crater.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen the tools they use to cut through those. It's like something out of sci-fi. It's basically a chainsaw magnified
Yes.
by 300 on wheels. They
With
just
with diamond teeth.
yeah, and they just chainsaw the earth with this giant blade arm.
Oh man. All right. Well, hey, are you ready to take a break?
Yeah, I'm gonna get a coffee refill, man.
Nice, nice. All right. We'll be back.
If you're interested in learning more about today's topic, be sure to sign up for our email list at hdtwoshow.substack.com.
All right, and we're back.
Got my nice warm cup of Joe.
A cup of Joe, nice hot coffee, and a warm office, warm home. All the good things that we sometimes take for granted, right? Yeah. So it sounds like you had some things that you really had to share this week. Quite some experiences. What's going on with that?
Uh, I'm just this week is behind us. I'm just trying to think like what can be gleaned from that. Everyone's got every single person and pet and wild animal in Texas has a story about this past week. It affected them in some way. Animals have protocol for bad weather, but you see birds trying to huddle up in the deep corner of your back patio because they're struggling to find some refuge. Our neighbor said a bunny hopped within 2 feet of him, looking at him like, "Can you help a bunny out?" Like not afraid of him at all. But it was, I'll say this, in every challenge like that, and this isn't just show talk. This is real talk. In every challenge like that, there's little opportunities, little of I don't know whether they're situational gifts or silver linings. And what I really liked about this past week is we couldn't leave the house, so it was like pandemic squared. Like lockdown, lockdown, lockdown,
Yeah.
cubed.
Yeah.
And so you're forced to spend a lot more time with yourself and with your family members. And as we've all heard, if we've been paying attention, the pandemic has put divorce lawyers in a big giant trunk full of money.
Yes.
Because everyone's basically eliminated a lot of their typical distractions that allow them to stack their lives in certain ways. When those distractions are gone, you're like, oh, this is really my life. The
Hmm.
quantity's gone. I'm staring at the quality.
You got to face it.
Yeah, and I'm not
Mm.
real jazzed about this. And so this past week, being frozen inside our houses, it's another opportunity to adjust your perspective. And yeah, we got on each other's nerves a little bit. We got a little cagey or got some cabin fever, but it was really nice being that close to everybody. And there was no option. You just embraced it. You surrendered to the reality of we're all just cuddling up for 3 hours straight until the next till the power comes on again, and then we're going to scramble and do our powers on protocol.
I almost wonder if how you and your wife handled this situation will shape your daughter's perception or even her memories of this time as being actually good memories if you all attacked it in a positive way, in the sense that she'll remember, wow, I just remember that time we didn't have power and we were all cuddled up and mom and dad, they were just, joking and, keeping it light. For me and my wife, the one thing we kept saying over and over was, hey, at least we're together. And that's because with my time overseas, that was, over a year, in the sense that, I was at another military base in Texas preparing to go over. So that was at least another 3 or 4 months, ahead of the actual deployment. So we've spent those extended times away from one another. And so we're actually grateful when we have something that we have to endure, but we can do that together. And you're right. Every now and then you just kind of like, okay, could you just not talk for 5 minutes? Just five. That's all I'm asking.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not like you can go, I'm going in the garage. The garage is a goddamn freezer. I'm not going out there.
Yeah, even when we lost power, we put some of the food because we didn't want to open the fridge to let all the cold out. So we actually put some of the food in the garage because the garage was colder than the fridge when the fridge was on. So
Yeah, that's good thinking. One of my clients told me that they were without power for like 3 days and they didn't have water for the whole week. And, you're talking to somebody who's on the other end of that Zoom call who is not just ripe, but probably rotten at that point. And she's like, the power's on. I'm going to go pull, what did she say? I'm going to go pull the bacon out of a snowbank and cook. Something so Midwestern. It was cracked me up.
Yeah, exactly. Golly. But you really hit on a really good point there, Graham, about, you know, times like these, or situations like these, right? Really test the mettle of the relationship. It takes things to a more micro level. So whatever, and I love how you phrased it about distractions, right? Normally life has its distractions, or, whether it's work, or even whether it's like, my wife and I, we have this tradition on Friday nights where we have projects. And so I'll work on, my technical projects or whatever pursuit that I have, throughout the night while, watching some YouTube videos or something, and she'll work on redecorating a part of the house and whatnot. And we'll, meet for dinner, because I'm usually in a different part of the house than she is. So we'll meet for dinner, we'll have dinner, then we, split up and do our thing again. And usually she's in bed before I'm ready to go to bed. So I'll come out and she's already in bed. And so we do get that space, even though we are hunkered down. And I think that's extremely important, both in a metaphorical but also in a literal sense, that for any relationship to survive, you need space. Being together is great, but it doesn't have to be every waking moment,
right.
Every day, every breath, where you're two joined as one. You can have separation and it be healthy. And that prolongs things, and then if you can add on top of that the ability to communicate in a healthy way. It doesn't always have to be positive, I guess. I can't always be positive.
Yeah.
But if you can communicate or set the stage to make it safe for somebody else to communicate with you, you combine all of that, and then you do have a real strong and healthy relationship. But if you think a relationship is being, 2 inches apart from one another at all times, otherwise you're not in love, that's just not a good way to look at things.
Yeah, man. You're right. Even in extreme situations like that, where, just body heat can be all you have for survival. Space, physical or mental, it's what it is for me. Just responding to what you said, it's everything in moderation. Everything in doses. Some things you need in heavy doses, like work, because you need to take that money and dole it out in small doses here and there. And with relationships, yeah, ideally, if you can moderate that, it's probably a good approach for longevity. You mentioned how our daughter might remember this, and it's important to us that she knows what's going on, right? Like, we don't sugarcoat it with like, this is really bad. We need to do this. Here's what we're going to do. We get her involved so she feels like she's not, kind of changes the dynamic. She's taking a role of activity and not like subjectivity, so she's acting on the problem with us. And then it's one of these moments of like, well, let's don't dwell on it. Let's bust out the board games. Let's have some fun. We've done everything we can. There's only so much you can control.
No, exactly right. And even if you're just huddling for warmth, obviously you're in close proximity. It happens, right? I mean, it's not the end of the world if you have to, huddle together, and that's certainly not being the point. But the point that I do want to make on that is that, yeah, be close, and that does bring you closer, absolutely. But you don't have to fill every moment with sound. You don't have to fill it with talking and conversation. Sometimes just being together in that moment and maybe running through an exercise of gratitude rather than focusing on what you don't have, like heat, electricity. Focus on what you do have, whether it be internally in silence or maybe alongside one another, where you kind of take somebody out of that doom and gloom, and you start focusing on something more positive. Like you said, a board game is a great positive distraction, absolutely. And yet, whether it's winter weather or whether it's just really feeling horrible at work, I find that when you switch it over to looking for positive things, even looking for ways to compliment somebody who you normally wouldn't compliment, you're doing it really for you more than them, because you're taking yourself out of that negative space and putting yourself in a positive space by, when you brighten somebody's day, that makes you feel good. Or when you think about the things that you do have that perhaps others don't have, or maybe others do have, but boy, you really had to fight to get that. Once you come from a place of gratitude, I feel that the negativity does fade away, and then you are replaced with much more positivity. And you're talking to a combat veteran. So regardless of the situation, right, if you can find some positivity, it really does go a lot further than just dwelling on, oh, it sucks, and oh, I'm cold, and oh, blah. I mean, yeah, it happens, right? But how you deal with it matters.
Yeah. For me personally, positivity generates hope. It's like a little hope generator. Someone's spinning the wheel, and so if someone's, I'll give you, this past week I saw we've got a great street. We've always said that we've got great people on our street. And I saw some really redeeming acts by our neighbors, and we do our part too. Angela and I are helpers when we can, and as I mentioned, we had first world problems. Like you guys loaned us your space heater in one of the coldest periods of this whole event. We don't know how many space heaters you have. We needed it, and you were like, keep as long as you want. It was just like no contract. You need it, so take it. One of our cross street neighbors has a 4x4, so he braved the treacherous roads where people were with 2-wheel drive. Because we have really steep hills and windy roads out here. They were getting stuck, going up hills, spinning out, abandoning their car. I mean, just terrible. He's like, hey, I'm making a run to HEB. Y'all need anything? And he asked a few neighbors around him. I mean, that's generous. He didn't have to do that.
Absolutely.
Our next door neighbor, they ran out of power. We were diligent about having backup chargers. We've got about 6 of them. All they needed was a backup charger, and we had one on hand. No thought about it. Here you go. We got plenty. And that meant a lot to them in that context. And so then they went to a health food store yesterday, and they were calling us, hey, what do y'all need? We made it out. And just the reciprocation, it just kind of perpetuates and regenerates, and it just keeps feeding the hope machine, I guess. Right.
And what's funny is that it reestablishes community. I've noticed that when things are good, everyone kind of peels off into their own world. And we then drift apart. And when I say we, it's a collective we, right? It's a societal we. Yet when there is some sort of struggle or strife, that's when people will either come together or they'll divide even bigger. But most times, I'd say the majority, I'd say 99% of the time, people do grow closer because somebody will have something somebody else needs, and there it is, right? So you could either be an asshole and hoard everything for yourself and not give it out, or you can give it out and contribute. And I think as humans, we all want to feel like we're contributing something to a larger cause, right?
Yeah.
And when we don't have a cause, then we feel, isolated and cut off.
Very true. Purpose. Maybe
purpose. It's all about purpose.
It really is. And I think,
exactly.
When you have children at those prime years in your mid to late 20s or whatever, or your very early 30s, you don't have to wonder what your purpose is. It's handed to you. But then, as in moments like this, yeah, you start to wonder, like, what's it all for, right? This sort of existential Carl Sagan kind of questions, like, who am I and why am I here and what's this all about? Yeah, being part of something, it feels like that's what we're supposed to do as human beings, right?
Well, exactly. And I don't necessarily think, at least I'd like to think, that it doesn't always have to be born of strife either, right? I think that if you don't have a sense of community, you can certainly try to build one. And again, when times are good, people may not be open to that. They're not receptive because they're like, why are you bothering me? Everything's fine. But if you can have that sense of community, I'll give you an example. When I was growing up on my mom's side of the family, every time I'd say I was going to do something with a friend, my grandparents' house was kind of like the center of the family. It was the cornerstone. So everybody met there on holidays. Everybody came there on birthdays. Even if it wasn't one of their birthdays, if it was my birthday, we'd still go there. And yet the house was always in a state of renovation, right? So my grandfather, he'd always start these projects, a DIY project. Like one time he ripped up the floor because he was going to retile the floor, and the floor stayed ripped up for over 20 years. One of those, I'll get to it eventually. And
wow.
And so every time I'd say, yeah, I'm going to go do this with a friend, and then I'll come back, and they'll be like, well, don't bring your friend here, because they were obviously embarrassed. But it was like one of those where like, well, don't. And it's like, I wouldn't even dream of it. Don't worry, And yet on my dad's side of the family, I'd hang out with uncles, and I'd notice that if there were, kids working on a mini bike, the uncles would go over and start, helping them figure out why the bike won't start, stuff like that. And then, hey, why don't you guys come on over for something cold to drink and whatnot. And so there was a lot more sense of community. And on my dad's side, they grew up with very, very little. And so I think that in doing so, they realized the importance of community, helping one another. Whereas on my mom's side, they weren't wealthy by any stretch, right? But they also weren't, absolute lower class. They were firmly middle class, with stability. I mean, my grandfather, he worked for a union, so he got to retire off of that. So they had that stability, at least, right? And yet they weren't ready to open up to others very easily. Like, even if you were dating somebody, you weren't allowed to bring them over until you got official permission to bring them to the house. And yet I'm, on my dad's side, if I was doing something with a friend, my uncle or my aunt would say, well, why don't you bring them with us? We're going to go over here, and we're going to go do this. Why don't you bring them, So it was kind of a night and day difference. And the thing about community is you don't always have to be under the gun or trying to beat the odds. You can certainly have that community, right? Just by being friendly toward one another, just being a little more open, maybe even vulnerable.
Man, you just triggered a childhood memory very similar to what you described. Like my household, I've alluded to, and personally, you and I have shared notes and have talked about just the weird dad situation. and I didn't have a brother, and so a lot of my guy friends, it was interesting to hang out. Most of them, they all had brothers actually, coincidentally. See how that dynamic worked, like how you treat a little brother. Little brother always kind of gets the shit end, and they're different family configurations. And I had one friend that he was bad news, but his dad was ex-military, DAV. He owned and operated a auto mechanic shop, and when he talked, he yelled. He didn't have an inside voice, but he wasn't mad. He got mad, but it was just the way he spoke, very loud. And I was very welcomed in their home. And my buddy was the youngest of 5 brothers. And so as each year goes by, a brother would roll out of the house and go off either into the Marines or, the world. But what I loved is as soon as you woke up, you got fed and there was work to do. And you did it all day. And there was lots of time to screw around. We got into plenty of trouble doing shit we weren't supposed to behind the garage, or stealing a car for the day to joyride. Lots of that kind of trouble. But I was so drawn to their family dynamic. They worked together. They played together. It wasn't glamorous. It was not anything out of the 1950s. This was very crude and rough, but there was what you described. It was community, people doing stuff together. No airs. There's stuff to be done. Let's get it done. And then let's play when the work's done.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't sound like anybody would stand back and go, well, I don't do that. You jump in and you help out.
Yeah. And if I was sleeping over, I was put to work. It wasn't an option. It's like, if you're here eating our food, catch those logs as they fall off the saw. Nice.
It's almost like essentialism. You're doing what needs to be done. You're not griping about it. And really going almost back to the stoicism thing that we've discussed before is that you can't change it. So you can either embrace it or you can fight it. And usually when you fight it, it makes things even worse. It makes that awful time last longer. Whereas if you embrace it, and like in your story, if you embrace it with a sense of community, which means it's a higher reason that maybe it's not your favorite thing to, rake leaves, right? But you're doing it because, you took somebody up on their offer and you want to pay that back in some way. And everything's not money. Sometimes it's time. Sometimes it's, time with effort. And so those are ways that you can show others gratitude and appreciation, right? You don't have to whip out a wallet and, throw a 5 spot on the table and go, yeah, thanks for breakfast. I'm out of here. No,
I'll give you a good review.
Exactly.
Yeah, man, you're touching on, there are many forms of currency. There's the one regulated by our charming government, and then there's the ones that we as communities and individuals agree are worthy of exchange.
And that, you're right. Current and value, right? Value to anything is what 2 people agree it is. Mm-hmm. $5 might mean something different to you than it does to me. And yet that same $5, we understand it could buy many of the same things, but what value is attached to those things carries over into the money that was used to pay for it. Therefore, it could be more valuable to me because the thing that I spent that $5 on is something I really needed versus somebody else spending that same $5 on the same thing, just because they had $5 laying around.
So currency and value is circumstantial.
I believe in all cases, right?
Yeah. One guy who needs $5 would probably give a kidney for it because the thing standing in his way that $5 can eliminate is life. It's pivotal. Yes. Versus someone else is like, I lost a $5 bill today, whatever.
Yeah, and it's not always need versus want. Sometimes it's want where you've saved
Hmm.
And I'm using $5 as a low example. Let's say you wanted something that cost, $100, $1,000, $10,000, whatever.
Hmm.
You save because you really want that thing. And because you saved and you couldn't get it instantly like somebody else, if somebody else said, yeah, put it in the cart, let's go. Whereas, if I would have to, save for months, even years to get that thing, it's going to have a lot more intrinsic value to me, right? Even though it costs the same amount of dollars.
Yeah.
So that was just something like, wow, it was something that as we were talking, I just started to process.
Yeah.
And that's why, when you barter, right, you might need something more than the person you're offering something to needs of what you're offering, right? So that's how you barter, right? Yeah, it's like, well, I don't really need it, but I'll take 2 of those because then I can give one away and maybe use one, but you need this from me more than I need that from you. So
the person who wants it least always wins.
This is true. This is true.
It touches on it started getting me thinking about finances a little bit, and I'll keep the names out of it to protect the innocent, but
or the guilty.
yeah. Being cost conscious is it's a virtue, right? It's something we should all be careful about, the way we sort of steward our money and our finances and everything, and in equal parts. Like, that's fine in itself. It is. I think that also needs to be balanced with an equal amount of effort, energy, and attention to getting that resource, whether it be cash currency or other things. I think I've been in conversations where the focus is to save money, and my reaction is that's fine, but we could take this hour of not agreeing on how to save money and put it toward getting more money. So let's make sure we're doing both. You know what I mean? Like,
I think I know what you're saying.
Wink, wink, nod, nod.
Married man, I think you get us.
Yeah, that's like it didn't start until I started striking out on my own. The focus of how I spend my time, what an hour means to me. If I want to dick around with something that's broken under the sink for an hour, when I could spend that making X amount of dollars, and I could pay someone else, less than my hourly to do what they do best, then that makes sense.
Gosh, you brought something up that and is fairly recent. And for me, I believe time to be more valuable than money, because you can't get more time. You can make more money. I didn't say it would be easy to make more money, but you can.
Yeah.
And you can replace lost money. You can't replace lost time.
Right.
You can't slow time. And you can't make, you can save time,
right,
and then spend it elsewhere.
Right.
So, about a month and a half or so back, we ordered out, and I paid extra for a side dish. And when we got the order, the side dish wasn't in there. And the side dish was, I don't know, $6-7. And it wasn't in there. And so my wife's like, well, are you going to call them? And I'm like, I'll think about it. She goes, well, they ripped you off. You need to call them. And I'm like, okay, let me, and then she thought I was kind of being spineless. And so I said, well, I'll deal with it later.
Yeah.
And so the next day she's like, well, did you ever end up calling them? And I'm like, no, and I'm not gonna. She's like, why? Are you afraid to stand up to them?
I'm afraid of a freaking restaurant.
Yeah. So then I said, okay, all right. I said, listen close. And I gave her the whole, I value time more than money. I said, that was $6. And the amount of time it would spend for me on the phone to explain to them how they messed up and then prove to them that they messed up, only for them to give me store credit my time is more, I could do way more things with that same amount of time that would have more value to me than $6 freaking.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then she was like, oh, well, yeah, okay, I get it. You know, it was like you had to
Yeah.
really break it down.
Well, it's one of those things like we hear our whole lives, and for some reason it doesn't stick, or we don't see the broad application of this sage wisdom, is when people say it's not worth my time.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That wasn't worth your time. Or the one that's kind of cutesy is the squeeze worth the juice?
Right.
Am I going to get out of it what I put into it? There's so many different ways to phrase it, but it's just like, yeah, I hear you, man. Time is, you never get it back.
I think one of life's biggest lessons based on all of this, Graham, is that if you can master the concept of the value of time, not the concept of time, because we may never understand that, but
Time travel.
If you can master the concept of the value of time and how important and valuable it truly is, I think you will go far, because I think a lot of people willingly just let their time go, and they don't really put any thought as to what's going into that time. You just give it away. Like volunteering is different. But you are giving time for a reason, for a purpose, and that's valuable. But when we, spend hours and hours at work just staring at a screen because you think you can't leave until it's done, well, maybe if you did leave and hit it bright and early in the morning, you'd have some new ideas and the screen wouldn't be blank anymore. But instead, you're throwing away all this time for no reason. Well, you think it's for a reason, but it's really for no result, right? So why would you continue to throw time at something that isn't giving you a result when you could actually take back that time, right, and then apply it to something more productive, more useful, more valuable, and then come back to that thing where you were stuck, and next thing you know, you're not stuck like you were.
Yeah, I think the reason people don't do that is, one, they don't have enough experience to spin up a solution. They only know the one approach, or the one approach is kind of mandated and seemingly out of their control. I'm totally with you. I know myself enough now. I know my work enough now to where if I'm banging my head up against something, I need to get up off that chair, go do something else that's going to because if you're not getting those results, you're obviously thinking about it the wrong way, and you're not magically going to change the way you're thinking sitting in that with your ass in that chair.
Mm-hmm.
Get up, go for a run, go out and enjoy nature, go do your puzzle, stimulate a different part of your brain, jumping jacks, I don't know, whatever blows your skirt up, and then reapproach it either rested or just adjusted. I've got a policy in the middle of my day where if I've gotten up really early to work, I usually kind of hit a wall around 3 or 4. The workday's not done, but I've hit my wall just like kind of mentally, and I'll go meditate, which means laying down with my eyes closed. and it sometimes means a cat nap, but it also sometimes means just calming down, slowing down my heart rate, stopping my brain from racing, trying to find the same kind of calm you get when you wake up first in the morning, fresh, rejuvenated. Just 10 minutes. And then I'll get up, grab a snack, get after that shit some more, and finish out the day.
It's almost, it ties very closely to what we've talked about also in previous episodes, where when you're at a job, how do you know when it's time to actually make that change?
Yeah.
Where you're wasting your time at that job because you're not going to get any change. And, what does that really mean? How much do you give to that before you decide, it's a losing battle and my time is better spent elsewhere? So it's not a matter of breaking away when you're focused, because that's when you're at your peak. And if you break away when you're focused, it takes you, at least 30, 45 minutes to get back into that, versus if you're just stuck.
Yeah, if you're in the flow, stay in the flow.
Yeah,
man.
right.
Yeah,
right.
That's nirvana.
Yes, exactly. And even if you could just go get a glass of water, just that change of scenery might jar something loose, or maybe you do need a little more time than just, walking into the next room. Maybe you do need like a power nap to kind of refresh yourself and what have you. So that's big. That's big. So yeah, don't pull away, but also I think you should be protective of your time, almost to a ruthless degree. I am now, and I have been probably for the last 10 years, been very protective of my time in the sense that I really evaluate, especially in the workplace, is this meeting really necessary? Do you really need me at this meeting? And if they say, yeah, because we might have a question, I'll be like, and if it's something I really don't want to spend my time on, I'll say, well, I'll tell you what, if you do have a question, jot it down during the meeting, send it over to me on an email, and I'll reply to that.
Man,
I didn't need to be on a half-hour long call for a 2-minute question.
dude, yeah, there's genius and brilliance in that approach. And could I spin off into a tenuous theory tangent?
Yeah, please.
Past couple 2 or 3 years, you do hear the term time vampire, right? And that's what makes people like you and me be very protective. Like, you're not coming and sucking my time away, you weirdo, lurching in the darkness and the shadows. And you also see like little memes and little T-shirts like, this meeting could have been 2 emails, right? Like, there's definitely this communication vibe of like, stop wasting my fucking time. And
Yes.
and when you historically, when you pull a bunch of people into a meeting and everyone's sitting there looking like, why am I here? That's where you see the most posturing. People who are like, well, I'm here, I need to add value, I think. Otherwise, people just see me as a space waster. So they lean in and say something stupid or try to like sound smart. And I've noticed lately in this past year or so, maybe sort of pandemic influenced, people just jump on the call and get shit done, right? I see a lot less of that kind of like crusty approach to assembling people and getting stuff done. Anyway, that's my words on that.
No, I like that a lot. And really, I mean, I think meetings are probably the most universal thing that people get wrong. And I'm just going to say, I'm not saying I'm awesome at meetings, but if you're going to call me to a meeting, what's the agenda? If you don't have an agenda, then I'm going to tell you, hey, if you don't have an agenda, then I'm not going to really be there, because I don't know. I'd like to prepare ahead of time, number one, but number two, I'd like for us to stay focused as to what we're going to talk about so we can get back to what we were pulled away from in the first place. Right. But then let's look at the opposite of that whole, the meeting needing to have purpose, or, taking care of it within 2 emails. Then there's the opposite. If it takes more than 2 emails, maybe you should get on the phone. And it doesn't have to be a conference call. Sometimes it can be just, hey, I'm going to call Graham and get clarification on the 2 emails we were trading, because then you find you're spending more time on the emails than you are just on the phone with a 30-second clarification, and then boom, you're done and you're moving on. So there's that balance and that knowing, right? Which tool do I use at the moment that's going to save me the most time?
Yeah.
And then if you're really to think about it, when you tell somebody, hey, send me an email, I'm not going to be at that meeting. Well, guess what you're asking them to do? Spend more time on something that they could have just got answered if you were at that meeting.
Yeah. Hey, if you're kind of in the spirit of wasting time, go waste some more of that shit.
Exactly. Well, yeah, you seem to be amenable to that, so I'll let you go do that while I be productive, and then I'll read your email when I get to it.
Yeah, that's a thing you do. So keep doing you.
Yeah.
I've got a client who turns every meeting into sort of a tactical working meeting, and he'll spin off and try to solve problems in a meeting. And I used to let him do it, but now the rapport has gotten so that we're very frank with each other. We trust each other. We respect each other. And I start every meeting. He's my client, but every meeting we go into, whether they said it or I said it, I set an agenda. And when he starts to spin off, I'll entertain him for a minute. I won't be rude, but I'll get right back on track. And when he starts to you can almost smell the smoke, man. The gears are just turning like hard. And he'll start coming up with these new ideas, and I'll just be like, well, if you need my help helping that be realized, just let me know, and I'll get right back on track.
There you go. There you
Because
go.
yeah, those people he did just this past week, took a half-hour meeting, turned it into an hour, and that was me feeling like I successfully mitigated my time suck. Do you know
Yes,
what I mean? Like
absolutely.
it's that bad, it's that rampant.
Absolutely. I get it. No, I get it. I'll tell you what, let's take a break. And then when we come
Yeah,
back, what I'd like to do is just kind of like bullet point what we just discussed, because I think this is important and could really help a lot of you out there that really feel like, you know what, I think I'm on a treadmill. I'm spinning in circles. I don't have enough hours in
yeah,
the day.
yeah.
And let's bullet point that and see if we can help some folks with that. How's that sound?
That sounds like a good idea. I'm gonna get some coffee.
All right. We'll be right back.
Got any ideas for future shows? Going through something and want some advice? Or questions you want to be read on the show? Email Mike, Jay, and Graham at advice@hdtwo.show.
All right, and we're back. And before we went to break, we were talking about the value of time as well as the value of protecting your time, almost to the point where you have to be, you know, what's the word I'm looking for here? Where you've got to be ruthless in protecting your time, because if you let people, they will take your time away and not even think twice about it.
Yeah, it's true, and you could kind of make a reach and say, if you don't protect anything you have that's of value, people will just come and take it.
Very good point. Very good point.
Right. Because it was the conversation about cash money that led us into the whole currency, things of value, and then time.
That's true. I mean, if you don't lock your doors,
Yeah.
somebody can just come in and take whatever you have because you didn't really protect your things, right?
Yeah.
If you don't
Yeah.
lock your car doors when you go to the mall, then you might not even have a car
Yeah.
when you come
Yeah.
back because you didn't take the steps to protect it. So I think the first step, though, because we were going to bullet point this out, is that the first step, I think, is to, number one, understand the value of your time and place a value on it. I think too many times we say, well, it'll just take a few minutes. Well, when you multiply that, it'll just take a few minutes for something that really isn't truly necessary, and you multiply that by the 5, 6, or even 10 times a day that happens, the next thing you know, you're scrambling at the end of the day going, where did my day go? So, first step is identify the value of your time. And then I think second step would be to determine to protect that time, right? So really assess, what are you being asked to do? How long will that take? Okay. So that when you are giving the time, it's for something you agreed to, that you didn't get just suckered into. You agreed to give up your time for that. So it is a worthy investment of that time, right? Because it's going to produce something of value to you, whether you get that satisfaction of helping somebody or whether you're contributing to your community in some way, right? By giving that time. I think those are two important things, and there's more that I'll go into, but what do you think about those two so far?
Yeah. Yeah. I think what you just described, it starts to drum up the notion of boundaries also. Like as when you're thinking about, oh, this is just take a minute, and you're giving your time, you agree to give your time. It starts to, you have to ask yourself, am I creating a understanding that I will always give a couple minutes? Is this a one-time thing? Like really establishing clear boundaries with people. And you and I, through life experience, they're there. If you got a minute, they'll take 5.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
there are people, I find myself thinking this and sometimes saying it out loud. It's like, wow, they're just not afraid to ask. Like it just blows me away, the thing people ask for. And yeah, so boundaries.
Well, no, and because people don't think to ask or don't even think about the fact that they're asking
Yeah.
and what they're asking, and that they continue to ask, maybe time and time again, is because they themselves have not taken that that step of identifying that time is valuable, not just to them, but maybe to others. So, in my understanding of time being of value, I also then take strides to not waste other people's time. I try to be succinct or direct, unless we're spending time together, just talking or chatting. I mean, everything doesn't have to have a very specific scope and purpose, right?
Yeah.
But if you are being taken away from something, it should. And I'll give you an example of this that happens in my very home. And that is on, whether it be a weeknight after work or on the weekends. I mean, guaranteed, as soon as I get, my mind set to something, I'm going to get something done, or I'm going to do something, or I'm going to think through something. And as soon as I get comfortable, I get a, would you help me? And I'm like, okay, help you do what? And she's like, well, I just need help moving this over here. Okay, fine. I'll help you move that over there. Right? And then she'd be like, well, why are you getting fussy? And I'm like, well, because I wasn't really planning on helping you move that thing over there. And then she thinks I'm just being, a total asshole. And so then I help her and I say, okay, are we done? Yeah, we're done. I'll go in, I'll settle in again. Would you mind going to the garage with me? And it's like, okay, I guess, and she's like, well, you don't have to, so now it gets passive aggressive. And I'm like, no, you asked. And I said, yes, I'll help you. Yeah. I said, but here's the deal now. I need you to think of everything you need my help with up front.
Stack it up.
Make a list. Yep. Okay. Write it down if you have to.
Yeah.
But you're gonna disclose to me ahead of time all the things you need my help with at once.
Yep.
I said, I'm not doing the onesie twosie thing. Yeah. And she thinks I'm just being a hard ass about it. Like, wow, you're just helping your wife. Why is that a big, it's not like I'm asking you to donate a kidney, and it's like, well, because I value my time.
It's a slippery slope, man, because there's part of you that's like, please turn off the faucet from that stream of consciousness. Like, as it comes to your mind, it's landing in my ear. Like, let's stop that craziness. But then it's on the other side, you're like, you don't want to be a dick also. It's so, I mean, it does sound like you have to manage it somehow, right?
But do you? Because now when she asks, she'll sometimes preface it with like, I know you're busy, or hey, I know you weren't expecting to have to do this. And then she'll ask me for that one thing, and then I'll say, okay, and what else?
Please, my Lord.
We're done with that.
I know you're a busy man with many responsibilities and great burdens.
I mean, but again, I always follow up with, okay, and then what else is on your list so we can get it all done at once?
Yeah.
And you might think, again, this guy's, just, he's all about the efficiency and, oh my gosh, that's your wife and all this and that. But, I can't tell you how many days I've lost, full days where I've set out I was going to do something. And then the honey, can you help me with goes from one thing to 5 things to 10 things. Next thing you know, the sun's gone down and I didn't get to spend not even 5 minutes on the things that I had set out to do for that day.
Yeah.
So, for me, it's almost worth making it a little bit more painful than just a freedom to just ask because, it's just going to take a few minutes. And again, that stacks up, right? So tell me how many minutes, a few minutes is going to be multiplied by the many things that you have. So I can then block out that time and focus on that, right? Yeah. Focus on her, focus on what she's requested.
Yeah. Like undistracted. You get my full attention.
Exactly. Yeah. And then I can finish that. And then we have a deal that once I'm done, I get to go do what I do. And if you need more help, well, then we're going to negotiate a time for that to happen
Yeah,
afterwards.
because it does, like, just looking at it pragmatic, aside from the relationship dynamic, it does create this, like, yeah, you're getting your to-do list done, but mine is suffering. I've got priorities that are specific to me. You are a priority, and then you start to paint the picture of that quadrant where you're like, is this urgent and important, or is this
Right.
important but not urgent? Let's bump that down.
Right.
That's getting done at the end of my day.
And there have been times where I've told her, like, gosh, we spent all day doing this stuff, and now my day just begins,
Yeah. Yeah.
and the day's already gone, right?
I know. I
And
know. It's really it's tricky to manage, and yeah, you have to kind of crack the whip, I guess. If one, it's a circle of insanity if you just let it keep happening, right? And if you're
yes,
dissatisfied with the outcome and handling it either straight on and pragmatically or like delicately, whatever your style is
right.
probably the best approach.
But if you just let it go, then that builds resentment,
Yes.
and so
Yes.
the pain is the pain of setting those boundaries is temporary in the sense that sooner or later they get it. And then I don't just mean wives. I mean, girlfriends, brothers. Hey, can you come help me move some things?
Yeah. It's a jagged, yeah, it's a
Yeah.
little prickly pill you're asking them to swallow, and they'll feel better after.
Yes. Well, because they know what you're about, right? They
Yeah.
understand,
Yeah.
and they don't have to know, well, because I value time and I'm good. No, they just know that, hey, you know what? That's not just, Jay's not the kind of person that I can just spring things on. I really got to ask ahead of time and plan ahead a little bit. I'm not saying have a whole battle plan laid out, but don't ask me on a Saturday morning, hey, what are you doing today? No, that doesn't work that way.
My day's mapped out.
Yeah, my
Thank
day
you.
is mapped out. And even if it's not, it is.
Yeah. 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 Yep. Man. God, there's so much. I wanted to give you another example of tricky little time vampires, and you started to
Yes.
talk about the value of your time, and I feel like sometimes people who steal your time without asking, they may not realize it because our minds uh, your brain is running the show. The conscious you is only a layer, right? A translation of what your brain's really trying to do. And in that brain are decades of things you've learned, good and bad, your good side, your bad side, the little ninja skill you've been crafting your entire life that throws people on the
Mhm.
back foot every time. You're the je ne sais quoi thing that is you. And I don't think they realize it, but what they're implying is that your time is less valuable than mine. So, hey, I've got this little thing I can't figure out. Can you figure it out?
Right.
Fucking figure it out with on your time because my clock's running over here.
Oh my gosh, that is gold. That is gold. And and as usual, I've got a real world example of that. And that is, we actually had neighbors over, you amongst them, but we had neighbors over for dinner, and one of the neighbors walks up to me and shows me her iPhone and says, "Hey, could you tell me why it's doing this thing?" And we're in a social setting, and it's like, well, and at the time it was true. It's like, well, I don't have an iPhone, so I don't really know how they work. I
Yeah,
don't know the
yeah.
intricacies. If you had an Android phone, I might be able to help you, but the very thought that we're at a dinner party that me and my wife are hosting,
Mm.
and number two, like you said, because that person didn't want to take the time to, do some research
RTFM.
or RTFM or even call her cellular carrier and say, "Hey, how do I
Mm.
do this?" Decided to come up and ask somebody who's, essentially off duty. I'm not IT guy at, 6 in the evening when I'm entertaining guests, right?
Right.
And yet it would have been okay if I would have taken the phone and spent an hour scratching my head trying to figure out what's going on with that. Where then that person would be able to be free to enjoy the rest of the party. or you could just leave it until another time, or say, hey, with this iPhone here, I've got some questions I really need help figuring out. Is there maybe some time we could spend in the next week or so to go over that, or in the next couple of days even, or hey, maybe even tomorrow, would you have any time? In other words, you're asking, not assuming.
Yeah, 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 and being ruthless about protecting that time, and it is circumstantial, and yours is like a textbook case of like, are you freaking kidding me? You came here to eat my food and drain me as a resource for free. But like saying yes, but right, like that's always the response. Yes, but I'm kind of fucking busy right now.
Making sure your food is hot.
Yeah, soaking your husband's liver with booze.
And I will say it was nobody related to you, so no worries there.
It wasn't my daughter.
It was not your daughter, no, because I would have helped her.
I know you would have. She loves you. There's another tricky little tactic I've seen, and this I think comes from elderly wisdom. So someone who we both know and love will say, and here's where it started, and I'm usually pretty good at detecting patterns, but sometimes the person in me that's very optimistic and naive kicks in, and I'm like, oh, I'll help you with whatever. There's nothing shady going on here. But when I'm in the right mode, I'll find that pattern quick. But it would be like, can you help hang this picture? It's really up high, and I don't want to get on a ladder. And be like, yeah. And I go in there and I see there's like 8 pictures laying around, placed on different points on the floor. I'm like, oh, I guess she's got a project going on. So I hang this picture.
Or you do.
I unwittingly walked right into a 2-hour project.
Oh my gosh!
What do in the first time you do it, you're just trying to probably establish like a goodwill.
Yes.
Right. Like, oh, I see. But man, it happened. Oh, can you come turn a wrench on this? Oh, there's about 6 other things. And it starts to become a matter of practicality. Like, I wish you would have led with all that, because I could have brought over all the right tools.
Yes.
Now I've got this like scatter spray of like, I got to go back, or do I need to come back Tuesday? Now I'm getting time sucked on 2 different days of my week. But it was just such a crafty little, almost like the iceberg approach. Like, oh, it's just this little peak in the water. And then you find out, like, whoop, there goes my afternoon.
Well, that's true scope creep, right?
Yes.
In the truest sense of the word.
Yes.
And you will want to protect yourself from scope creep at work, but also, in personal life.
Yeah.
I mean, you could have had a time commitment somewhere, and the 2 hours, if you would have known, you could have either rescheduled it or rescheduled you're helping her or him.
Yeah.
And I think that even though people don't always understand the value of time, they do know that if they are upfront with everything they need you to do, that you're going to say no. Right? So they suck you in.
Yeah.
And then they lay it on you so that you'll feel bad by having to say no.
Yeah. Yeah. There is this weird shift of like accountability or guilt that happens. And I think it's one of those tricky little maneuvers that people craft their whole life, and they know when to lean in and like apply a heavy dose of it.
Yes.
And when to basically like play possum. I'm just helpless and blah. And you're like, oh, I'll come help. And then all of a sudden they turn into a taskmaster.
Yeah. And the next thing you know, the whole house is painted and there's a new deck in the backyard.
Yeah. Yeah. That's funny, man.
So, going back to the bullet points, right? So number one is, you certainly want to understand the value of time, right? And the value of not wasting it, right? but also the value of applying it smartly, right? And then not allowing others to waste your time. So you've got to set those boundaries, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I would say that, to go along with all of that, you can also do your part to make sure you're not wasting other people's time. So in other words, it isn't all just about you and people not wasting your time. What are you doing to help ensure you're not wasting other people's time? And we mentioned a couple earlier. Well, number one is if you're going to have a meeting, have an agenda. Well, maybe have an agenda when you're asking somebody for help, right? And it doesn't have to be like, okay, we're going to formally go over this agenda before I begin, helping you.
I made copies. Here's yours.
Although with some people you might need that, but really, at least have an agreed upon scope or an agreed upon set of things that you are going to, take care of at that, during that session or that block of time or what have you. So what you can do is, if you're going to ask somebody to do something, already know what you're going to want to ask. Know it. Don't just wing it and think ahead. Is this going to lead to something else? And then is that going to lead to something else? And then be open to ask somebody, hey, would you have enough time to do these things? Or if you can just help a little, what do you think you might be able to help with? Mm-hmm. And then let the other person say, well, I can help with these 3 things, but for the other 2, I'm going to need to come back. Hey, no problem, that sort of thing. But know what you want, right? So that you can then communicate that and then allow the other person to either agree to the whole list or part of the list. But definitely know what you want. And then if you're going to deviate from that, then you need to agree to revisit that at a different time, because you lived up to your part of the bargain, and I'm over here throwing more stuff on the list. That's not cool.
Respect, and then sort of the whole package, gratitude.
Yes, absolutely.
Demonstrating gratitude for the use of time that can't be recovered.
Right.
We're really big on that, and we try to instill that in our daughter. Is like just the smallest handwritten thank you note goes a long way.
Sure.
What you said about okay, we've only got this much time. What can you get done? Basically sort of letting the person who's donating call the shots, right? To a certain extent. That brings the whole Tundra 2021 back in focus for me, because I'd heard third hand, I guess, that a lot of people in our community were in need, and you want to see someone's true character, you put them in a vice, you put them under some pressure, and you see who you're really, really dealing with at the rawest level. And a lot of people, around here, they're very accustomed to living first world lives, where every time you flip on the light switch, it comes on every time. There's never a shortage of any resource, food, systems. And they were acting really entitled and being real squawky. And then when the opportunity to help them arose, like, oh man, we need some food. Oh, well, cool. I've got this, whatever, Nature's Harvest double nut extra wheat that I could give you. And they're like, oh, no, I need Mrs. Baird's white. And it's like, I'm helping you. You need to be grateful. You either say yes or no to my offer. You don't try to articulate and be picky.
Well, I mean, you're right. That says a lot about the person. But also the phrase "beggars can't be choosers" really comes to mind. Mm-hmm. And all I have to say to that is just, wow. I can't even imagine. Now, granted, I was, we were raised at a different time where if I would have said, well, do you have chocolate instead? I'd get, smacked because you take what's offered, or you don't take it at all, and you politely say, no, thank you. But you're right. I mean, people just have no qualms about declaring what their preferences are when there are no preferences to be had.
There's a theme because I'm taking notes as we talk, as I always do, because I'm a nerd. But there's a theme here on all of these things: the character in crisis, the time. It's all about giving. It's all about giving. We've got the help gives hope
Mm-hmm.
part of the
Mm-hmm.
show we did. We've got the relationship closeness, asking for time from your significant other. It really is. It's about giving the sort of delicate basket that giving sits in. You have to protect what goes out, what goes in, and care for it and kind of groom it so everyone understands how delicate it is.
Well, absolutely, because if it's all gone, then there's nothing left to give, right? I mean, that's
Yeah.
so. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're gonna give out, but you also need to replace. And I think though that giving unconditionally is big, but that doesn't mean that you give without boundaries. So giving unconditionally means I'm going to help you only because, I've got the time and the desire to help you. I'm not expecting anything in return for that help. I'm not going to call in a favor, right?
Yeah.
I'm just going to help
Yeah.
you because I feel like, helping you. I admire you. I respect you. I'm going to help you. But that doesn't mean that from sun up till sundown, I'm going to help you because we didn't agree to that ahead of time. If it is a sun up to sundown
Yeah.
project and we've agreed to it ahead of time, I'm going to do it without condition. I guess my only condition to help is that you've got to tell me how long you need me for or all the things that you need. And then I can then determine how much I can give at any given, block,
Yeah, and you're starting to splice something that's really critical is the transactional approach of giving. I think some people see it highly transactional, like, okay, cool, I gave you that. Now I'm going to ask for something, and I understand how psychology works. You now feel obligated to give me something, and I'm very likely going to ask for something of greater value.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I hate that. Like, you might have credit in the bank that you can cash in on later when it makes
Yes.
sense. Or I might feel sort of, warm-hearted to just do something randomly to pay you back. But let's don't create a commerce situation out of this.
Absolutely. I mean, first of all, it takes away the joy of actually giving, right?
Shifts the dynamic for me. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
I see. This is just kind of like a ATM
It's
machine.
business.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, that's big because yeah. And what I have found is that when you give things, whether it's time or material things or even money, when you give those things unconditionally, and again, not without boundaries, if you need money and you need $10,000, I can kick in 100,
Boundaries.
So there's boundaries,
Yeah. I
but
got
at
a
the same
Benjamin
time,
coming your way.
yeah. At the same time, if I'm going to kick in 100, and I know some people have to. I get it. Some people have to say, well, when do you think I'll get that back? For me, if I'm going to give 100, I don't really expect that I'm going to get it back because if I do, it's only going to create this awkward dynamic between us.
Yeah.
That I'm expecting the money back. I know I'm expecting the money back, and as soon as it goes unsaid, then it's like, wait a minute, is he ignoring this on purpose? And then you're thinking, man, when's he going to ask me about that money? I just don't have it. I don't want to have to say that. I don't want to, instead just do it without any strings attached. And then what you find is that, and maybe not in all cases, nothing's absolute, but what I find is that when I do that, the things I get back from that person or people is way more than if I were to specify something.
$100.
Yeah. Well, give me back $100. Okay, I got my $100.
Net
but if
zero.
if I didn't ask for it back, or just said, you know what, hit me back when you can, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not going to, every time I see you, I'm not going to say, hey, where's that 100? Where's that 100? Yeah. What I find is that what you get back from people is way more than what you gave. And when you specify what you want back, you're limiting yourself.
Mm.
Because then you're limiting the other person in what they can give back to you. Maybe they had an idea to give you back $120 instead of just 100, but you focused on that 100, or maybe instead of the $100, they decided they were going to, take you to a nice steak dinner, that ended up being, way more than 100 because it's a really nice place, or you get a really nice gift for your birthday, just whatever. It doesn't even really matter. What matters is that you did it without strings. I can't, without conditions, but not without boundaries.
Yeah.
And then you will get back way more than what you gave, because you didn't think enough to ask for what you want specifically, unless you're asking somebody for help. Then you need to be very specific.
Yeah. I think you hit it on the head. If you surround yourself with good people, what you get back is going to be exponential. If you take the bookie approach,
yes,
it's transactional, but you might get $100 and a really nice bottle of wine back. Ain't that a nice surprise? Oh, look, and giving gives hope. Like it restores a certain amount of hope in people.
Absolutely. And you feel good giving back instead of obligated. Like, okay, you want the 100, here's your damn 100.
Yeah. Yeah. And every conversation you have isn't filtered through you owe me money, I owe you money, I feel lesser than. It's not that.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. I'm inferior because I owe you something,
Yeah.
You're a golly. And so, and the way it all ties back to time, though, is that you had to spend time making money if you're going to loan out the money, right? But again, that's a decision that you can make. And if you do make that decision, don't have a lot of attachments tied to it, And again, it doesn't have to be dollars. It could be like you give up a Saturday morning. You can, it's very easy. Some people make it hard on themselves where they don't say anything. They show up for the morning, and the next thing they know, it's 3 p.m. and the day's gone. Whereas if you're being asked, you can say, you know what, no problem, I can help, but I can only give you an hour in the morning. Starting at 9 a.m. We start at 9. I have to be done by 10. I've got other commitments. You don't have to say what they are, and they may not even be commitments. Yeah. But you know what? You're committed to yourself.
Exactly. Man, that's well put. And make it rewarding for yourself. If you're given an hour on a Saturday that you typically wouldn't, go the scenic route and go by that donut shop you never go by, but it's always in the back of your head. Like make it a reward for you. I mean, giving is rewarding in itself, obviously, but look for the opportunities for you to go, that was a good morning spent. That was cool.
Well, you had me at donuts.
What you said about giving money out, specifically about money, one of my life mentors, I was really close to him for 10 years. He told me so many things, not all sage from the mountain, but I think this one was. He said, don't ever put out any money you expect to get back.
There you go.
Do not get your hopes up on whether it's at the gambling table or with people. Mm-hmm. Life will be a lot easier if you...
Or investing.
Yeah, gambling.
Gambling, same thing. Right?
And I never, I was 23 when I met him, so at that time, every penny was critical to me. But over time, I really understood what he meant. People are going to ask for $100 here and there. You're going to need to. It took me way back to junior high where there was this guy. He was like 3 grades ahead of me, and I ran into him randomly. So he's like, "Hey man, you got $5 for gas?" And then I was in junior high. I was working. I was making my own money on evenings and weekends. I was like, "Yeah, no big deal. $5 wasn't much to me." In my mind, in junior high, I would get that money back, of course.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I must have bugged that guy for the entire school year. Hey, man, you got that $5? And I probably looked like a jackass at some point, and he clearly thought I was stupid because he'd always be like, "Oh, yeah, man, I'll get that to you." And because he was 3 years older, there's a power dynamic that you don't want to breach. Yeah. To this day, never saw that $5.
You never got it back.
But if I had the interest on that thing, if I had had that advice earlier on, I never would have thought about it twice. And, could have spent that, instead of shaking him down all year, I could
Yeah.
have spent that time doing other shit.
Well, and who are you really making it easier on? Are you making it easier on the person you're loaning it to, or gifting it to, or are you making it easier on yourself? You're taking the pressure off you because you're having to spend all that energy and time chasing something that isn't going to happen.
Yeah.
And again, we talked about the value of time. Would you rather spend time chasing something that isn't going to happen, or would you rather spend time chasing something that will happen?
Yeah.
It might make you more than $5.
Yeah. Time, money, resources, respect, gratitude. It
matters.
Yeah, it's all connected. And
yes.
Yeah, it does. I typically don't put you on the spot, but I wanted to see if there's, it's my heart goes out to you for losing another parent, man. I'm fortunate enough. I don't know if that's the right word, but I haven't lost any of my parents yet. In this week of dark isolation and limited distractions, is there anything you'd want to share with me offline or for the show?
That's a really good question, and I really appreciate y'all's thoughts and prayers, and the outpouring of support has been tremendous, from my inner circle, and it really shows you who your friends are. But in terms of what I've learned is that, well, a lot of what I went through this week took me back to my time overseas. Without the shooting,
right,
of course.
Right. Yeah, it almost got to that. We're in Texas, by the way.
And I did take note of that. I do have a certain way to handle things that are unpleasant, less than ideal, and downright heartbreaking. And for me, that is that things got to get done right, no matter what. So, and I had this mindset in combat as well. You can either, freak out or panic and run around going, what do we do? What do we do? Or you can, stop and think about what's in front of you and what are your options. And you might think, well, that takes too much time. And, but you can do all that in a split second if you had to. Even in combat, soldiers would ask, well, Sarge, what happens if they're shooting at us? And I'm like, well, then you shoot back. Right. And they're like, oh yeah, but what if there's more of them than us? And I said, well, then if you fall forward, always fall forward. And they're like, well, what does that mean? I said, that means that even if your name's on it, they didn't get the best of you because you went forward, not back. You didn't run. You faced them. Yeah. And I've always taken that to heart. So when I look at something that is a challenge and everything seems unsurmountable in the moment, right? Loss of power, you don't know when you're going to get it back. That just seems like a forever thing. God, you lose a parent, that is a forever thing, at least for the rest of your life, right? And yet where I find solace is where I say, okay, what needs to be done, whether it's, what would my dad want me to do, or what needs to be done to make sure that he gets what he needs even afterwards. Is he getting his wishes taken care of? He was only married less than 2 months. So is his wife getting what she needs? And so I would check on her. So it becomes a series of tasks that when you focus on the tasks and not the situation that brought about those tasks, the next thing you know, you're done. It's over. It's behind you now. And you handled it, with a calm head. Right. And frankly, it went by way faster because you kept busy trying to solve what's in front of you. Does that make sense?
It 100% does. There's those two words, fall forward, is so profound. If you pause and think about it, it's next level to like finish strong. it's I think it's kin to that notion, but it's so profound. And I tend to agree. I speak from, without experience, but you want to do right by them. There's something about their legacy that you're trying to preserve, honor, perpetuate, maybe. I don't know. I hear you. So thanks for sharing that,
No,
man.
I appreciate you asking. It's not something, again, with pandemic times and being snowbound, it's not something you get to talk a lot about. And it does feel good, to talk about it. And actually, as I'm sitting here talking to you, I'm actually looking at a picture of my dad. My wife printed it out, and it's a recent picture, which I don't have that many of. And he's just giving me this sly grin. So I know he's up to something up there, because that's my dad. He was always kind of a troublemaker, and so he's got this sly smile, like he's up to something. And, and yeah, so, I mean, look, it wasn't like we called each other every day, and we would text each other on holidays and birthdays. But he would come down for visits, and, we got to meet his now wife, and before they even got engaged, he wanted us to meet her and all that good stuff. But, we had we were on good terms. I don't know if healthy. I mean, when you're talking about family, is anything truly healthy? I don't know.
Yeah, I know. Family's
it
tricky.
is tricky. It is complicated, but at the same time, I do love my dad very much, and he'd always been there, and there were obstacles thrown up when he divorced my mom. There were all kinds of ex-wife obstacles, but also court-based obstacles and societal obstacles for him staying in the lives of me and my brother. And yet he fought and made sure that he was always a part. And that inspired me to be, that kind of dad to my boys. And I ended up having to fight, to be in their lives and to, have them actually live with me. They lived, their preteens all the way till graduating and moving out, and so I'm blessed for that, because that doesn't always happen. But it took a lot of money and a lot of time. But my dad inspired me that you don't give up, because it's worth it.
Yeah.
Those are your kids, and that's who you fight for. Them and your wife, if you have one. Those are the reasons you get up in the morning. So, keep fighting. And he taught me so much growing up. And I shared stories already in just a few episodes that we've had. But he has, again, inspired me. He's the reason I wanted to be a soldier my whole life growing up. I mean, some people want to be astronauts and doctors, and me, I always wanted to be a soldier, and I achieved that. I realized, that dream. But yet, just being a soldier wasn't enough. I wanted to be, a good soldier that he would be proud of, and he's told me more than once that I did that. I mean, for him, I mean, he was a Vietnam vet, and he was just blown away that I went to Desert Storm in '91 as a full-time, Army soldier, regular Army, and then I got out in '91 after the Gulf War, and I want to say 13 years after 9/11 happened. So I'd been out of the Army 13 years. 9/11 happened. I dropped 80 pounds. I went into the reserves, and we ended up going overseas, again. And both times I was in Iraq, I saw Kuwait on my second tour, in 2004. But in '91, I never saw Kuwait. It was Saudi Arabia and Iraq only, because of our mission was a little bit different. So I never saw Kuwait until 2004. But to my dad, and my contract actually expired in the middle of my tour over there as a reservist. And so I finished my tour literally with no contract. But it didn't, it didn't matter to me. But yeah, I dropped 80 pounds, rejoined as a reservist. Didn't have to, wasn't under any obligation. It wasn't like they had my number and they were going to call me. after 13 years, you're done. You're done. Like they, you know. But I felt I was
Yeah.
young enough to still be able to contribute, and so I got the respect of my dad. Not that I didn't have it before, but he really thought that was a big deal going back in when I didn't have to.
Yeah. I'll tell you, anecdotally, and just even from things I read, a certain amount, no matter what your child parent configuration is, a nod from your parent of approval is almost the singular thing children look for, unless your parent's like a horrible piece of garbage. But I think that even plays in. They were your first and longest figure of authority. Getting
Your
them
first
to,
hero.
yeah, in some way or another, and getting them to give you a nod of sort of acceptance and approval or pride is major. So I'm glad you got that.
Yeah, no, thank you. And just one last point is that my youngest son called me on Sunday, and hadn't heard from him in a while. My two youngest are in the Army; they're both sergeants, and so I hadn't heard from them in a while. And I told them their grandpa passed, and so my youngest is he's real in tuned to things. So he's like, Dad, I'm really sorry to hear that. I'll call you over the weekend. And so he called me over the weekend, and I was kind of listening to some of his stories, being a sergeant in the Army, and some of the things that he's doing in his day to day. And the bottom line of what he's doing is he's taking care of soldiers, which is an NCO's job.
Mm-hmm.
You take care of soldiers. You guide them. You lead them. Yeah, you have to punish them if needed. You've got to have that, give them discipline. But then again, you're subject to the same. So it's not like you're above it, right? So if you screw up, yeah, you're going to get disciplined too. But the approach that he was sharing with me, it almost brought tears to my eyes, because I didn't really have an opportunity, or maybe I did and just don't realize it, but I don't really think I had an active role in shaping their approach to leadership. And yet when I heard how he was approaching it, it was almost a mirror image as to how I approached being an NCO,
Mm-hmm.
overseas in
Sure.
2004.
Yeah.
It was almost like for like. And I was getting choked up, and I just told him, I said, because I don't want there to be any ambiguity. I said, son, I am so proud of the leader you've become, and I hope that you continue to grow and learn new things to become an even better leader each and every day. He goes, Dad, that's what I strive for. I want to be better than the day before, and I'm not going to stop. But again, his approach is very human, and I think you and I have discussed, at least my vision of leadership, which is to kind of be more of a servant leader, not a pushover, right? But a servant leader where you're guiding by example, or you're taking the time to understand the human, behind the name.
Mm-hmm.
Or if somebody is, performing under their own capabilities, you want to diagnose why that is, and get to the root of it. And that's what he's about. He does that. He asks, hey, I've seen you kind of moping around and not really, having much pep. What's going on? And they'll open up. And so just the fact that he cares enough to ask means a lot. And you never know how many soldiers he then helps to become better soldiers, better leaders, because that's really what the Army never has a shortage of, is good leaders. They have leaders, lots of them, but good leaders are in very short supply. And if he's helping to groom, a crop of good leaders just by giving a shit, but also taking that humanistic approach and taking his role as a non-commissioned officer seriously, to the point where he doesn't compromise on that. Again, it just brought a tear, and I made sure he knew. Son, I am so proud of you. I want you to know that I am really, really proud of you, and I'm excited to see your journey.
Yeah, man. And you just fed his soul with those words. And what he's doing is, I mean, you planted, well, who's to say chicken or egg? I mean, your dad planted the seed, his dad probably planted the seed, but there's a legacy that's being passed on and perpetuated. And so when your son's being honored, for being an awesome leader of leaders, and hey, what was your secret? I just modeled my dad, and you're there, your existence is present in his daily achievements. It's good stuff.
Yeah, the only time I get brought up is when before he made sergeant, he was lower enlisted, and he might get in trouble over something and have to write an essay or something, and he would tell that sergeant, "Man, you're just like my dad." And he goes, "Why is that?" "Because every time I screw up, I got to write a 1,000-word essay."
I'll bet you come up more than that. You just haven't found out yet.
But I again, I'm just, even if I had nothing to do with it, I am just so glad that he is a human-centered leader with, ethics and morals and doing the good things instead of using, his own level of power that he has for his own benefit only, so I'm just really happy to see that there's another person out there in the world that thinks of more than just themselves.
Yeah, you did good there, man.
Thanks, buddy.
Well, is it time to wrap it up?
I think that's an episode, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's got me thinking. We've got our running list of topics. We're going to show our cards a little bit, and I think one I'd like to pick up for the next episode, or next recent one, would be fatherhood, just in general.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I might spring one on you as well, but maybe we'll talk about that in our production meeting.
Yeah. Hey, man. I think it goes to say we're both up for any topic.
Absolutely. But as always, it's been great chatting with you, my friend, and want to thank all of our listeners, for giving us a listen and putting up with our anecdotes. And hopefully you like what you hear, maybe learn something. And we are certainly hoping that you'll catch us again next week, because we are definitely looking forward to seeing how did that work out.
Yeah. Definitely worked our way out of the snow.
It ended up working out pretty well.
Yeah.
All right. Be well, my friend.
All right, man. Talk to you later.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Be part of the conversation. Join our interactive community where you can engage with Mike, Jay, and Graham, as well as other like-minded listeners just like you. Head over to hdtwoshow.locals.com and come on out and hang.